It began with explosions that shook the world. But what if this war didn't begin in 2022 at all? What if its roots reach back through centuries, empires, and ancient prophecies that have echoed across time? Tonight, we journey beyond headlines and politics, beyond borders and battlefields. We dive into a conflict that has captured global attention and ask the haunting question: was the Russia-Ukraine war hinted at in the pages of Scripture? And if so, what does that mean for our future? When Russian forces crossed into Ukraine, the world stood still. Sirens wailed. Skies glowed with fire. Families ran for shelter with nothing but their children in hand. Cities that once buzzed with life became symbols of resistance and heartbreak. The invasion wasn't just a military strike. It was a shockwave that spread across continents, shaking economies, alliances, and the confidence of an entire generation. But this war didn't emerge out of thin air. To truly understand it, we have to go back, not decades, but an entire millennium, to a realm called Kiev and Rus, a land where Eastern Slavic tribes united, forming a civilization that both Russia and Ukraine claim as their spiritual birthplace. Imagine a kingdom where both nations trace their roots, yet both grew into wildly different destinies. As time passed, empires conquered and collapsed. Ukraine was divided, reunited, absorbed, and reborn. Russia expanded into a vast powerhouse. The Soviet Union welded the two into one political identity. But when it fell in 1991, Ukraine reclaimed its independence, a proud nation rising from the ashes. Yet the bond and the tension between them never truly faded. It simmered beneath the surface, waiting, and for some, the Bible's ancient prophetic writings feel eerily familiar to what the world is witnessing today. Many turn to the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39, where a mysterious force from the far north leads an army toward conflict in the latter days. Words like Gog, Magog, Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal have stirred debate for centuries. Could these names be tied to lands around modern Russia? Is this just a coincidence, or a glimpse into something deeper? Yet here's the truth few want to accept. The Bible does not name Russia. It does not name Ukraine. Prophecy does not operate like a GPS. Instead, it reveals patterns, cycles of power, war, pride, and spiritual struggle. And those patterns, they're unmistakable in our world today. Nations rising against nations. Alliances forming, fracturing, and reforming. Rumors of wars spreading across continents. Precisely what Jesus spoke of in Matthew 24, describing the birth pains before the end. But whether or not this specific conflict fulfills prophecy directly, it unquestionably reflects the prophetic spirit of a world on edge. Beyond geopolitics, this war carries a spiritual weight. In bombed-out churches, candles still flicker. In underground shelters, believers whisper prayers over trembling children. In Russia, mothers kneel beside empty beds, praying for sons sent to an uncertain fate. Across Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas, Christians cry out for peace, for justice, for mercy. You can feel it, a spiritual tremor running beneath the physical conflict. Because war doesn't just break cities, it breaks hearts. It tests faith. It exposes the fragile threads holding humanity together. And Scripture warns us,
because war doesn't
in the
just
last
break
days,
cities,
darkness
it
would
breaks
grow bold.
hearts. It tests
Love would
faith.
grow cold.
It exposes the
Truth would
fragile
become blurred,
threads holding
and
humanity
nations would rise
together.
in anger, confusion, and pride. But there is another layer, one that many fear to speak about. The alliances forming around this war have the potential to reshape global power in ways that mirror the alignments hinted at in Revelation. Nations gathering, powers shifting, lines being drawn. Some scholars fear that this conflict could be the spark that lights a much larger fire, not necessarily the final battle, but a step toward a world increasingly poised for global confrontation. Yet prophecy is never just about doom. It's also about direction, about wisdom, about warning and hope. Because even in a world at war, Scripture points to a path forward, a way of peace rooted not in political deals alone, but in transformed hearts. Isaiah speaks of justice rolling like a river. Jesus blesses the peacemakers, not the warmongers. Revelation envisions a day when the nations find healing, when swords become plowshares, when broken lands are restored. And even now, mid smoke and ruins, you can still see glimpses of that hope. Volunteers crossing borders to feed refugees. Strangers opening their homes to families they've never met. Churches uniting. Relief convoys rolling into danger zones. Photographs of soldiers holding rescued children. Light pushing back against darkness. So, was this war predicted in the Bible? Not by name, not by map, but by pattern, yes. Scripture has always warned that humanity would face escalating conflict as the world draws closer to its final chapters. But prophecy was never meant to make us fearful. It was meant to make us watchful, awake, aware of the world's spiritual pulse. And now the question shifts from prophecy to responsibility. What will we do with the world we've inherited? Will we be blinded by division, consumed by hatred? Or will we choose humility, justice, and peace, the very things God has always required? Because in the end, the true battle isn't Russia versus Ukraine. It's humanity versus its own darkness. It's truth against deception, light against the shadows that seek to swallow hope. This war may not be the final chapter, but it is a reminder that the world is fragile. That prophecy is alive in the patterns of human history, and that every generation must decide its place in the story. So as the fires burn and the nations tremble, one question remains: will we stand as spectators, or step forward as peacemakers? The answer lies not just in governments, but in each of us.